Gerard Baker of the Wall Street Journal set off a bit of a furor when the subject of Donald Trump's veracity and how the press should cover any inaccurate comments surfaced on Meet the Press.
If somebody says just an outright falsehood, do you say the word lie? Is that important to start putting in reporting or not?
You know, it's a good... I'd be careful about using the word lie. Lie implies much more than just saying something that's false. It implies a deliberate intent to mislead.
I spoke to the Wall Street Journal's editor-in-chief earlier from New York. Jerry Baker, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You got a torrent of media criticism for those comments about whether or when the press should accuse the president-elect of being a liar. In fact, you say in the Journal, you stand accused of imperiling the republic by adopting a craven defense of presidential mendacity. How do you plead, sir?
Well, I thought I was going to be a fugitive from media justice for a while, and I was wondering whether I should go and lie low. But no, thank you very much for your concern. I've weathered it okay so far.
Well, my favorite line in your column, which you responded to this in the Wall Street Journal, after Dan Rather called your remarks deeply disturbing, is the following: I will confess to feeling a little burst of pride at being instructed in reporting ethics by Mr. Rather. It feels a little bit like being lectured on the virtues of abstinence by Keith Richards. How so?
Well, I mean, again, there's all... Look, we're in the media. How you know what it's like? You expect criticism from all sides. It's a little bit rich, to be honest with you, to be criticized for reporting ethics, especially over something like this, where I'm convinced that we're doing the right thing, by someone who had his employment terminated by a network because he was involved in making up a story about President George W. Bush. So for me to be criticized by somebody like that, as I say, I took it with just a very small modicum of pride.
Well, certainly a story that couldn't be confirmed and which CBS had to retract. Now, the Journal's editorial page.
It's true.
The Journal's editorial page has actually been pretty tough on Donald Trump. Has pointed out some statements that are sort of inconsistent with the facts. For example, mass illegal voting in the election, the birther conspiracy against President Obama. But there's a difference, you say, between your knowing that something is a lie, using the word knowing in quotes, and the paper describing it that way in print. Explain the distinction.
Well, look, first of all, the first thing to say is politicians speak untruths all the time. Lots of people speak untruths a lot of the time. And we report that. And so the right thing to do, I believe, is to say, when someone says something, we report what they say. Someone as important as Donald Trump, the president-elect, we report it, and we then measure what he says, examine what he says against the facts, and we give an estimate as to whether or not that, as far as we can tell, that statement is true. And several times in the last year, Donald Trump has said things that, frankly, aren't true. There is a difference, though, between saying that a subject said something that was untrue and saying that they lied, because lying is to know that someone is lying, you have to know their state of knowledge, and you have to know their state of mind that they had a deliberate intent to deceive. Now, you may be able to infer from a lot of what you know, a lot of what you think you know, that when somebody says something is untrue, when Donald Trump says what he said about Muslims on the roofs of New Jersey celebrating 9/11, that's untrue. You may even think it's a lie. I'm not prepared to report that it's a lie because that's a much higher standard of proof.
Just briefly, do you think there would have been this media criticism if you had said something similar about Hillary Clinton had she won the election? What does this say about the media's mindset toward the president-elect?
So I think you're absolutely right, Howie. I think, look, I mean, the first thing also is other politicians have lied all the time. You know, when we didn't get any criticism at all when President Obama said, if you like your health insurance plan, you can keep your health insurance plan. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. We didn't describe that as a lie. It was an untruth, but we didn't describe that as a lie. And we haven't described things that Donald Trump has said as a lie. I think that the answer, Howie, is what you're getting at is a large section of the media have decided that there is something specifically and uniquely threatening and malevolent about Donald Trump, that they actually have to take a posture of confrontation and opposition to him, and they have to be going out, they have to be in the arena,
right,
and actually saying this man is a terrible threat to our freedoms and to our democracy, and they have to be out there actually in a kind of partisan way disagreeing with him.
Jerry Baker, great to have you on the show. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Howie. Thanks for having me.